At 11:51 p.m. The phone screen flared, a stark beacon cutting through the dimness of my apartment, illuminating the truth with ruthless precision. It was a message from my mother. The words seared themselves into my memory. "We've agreed. You're no longer part of the family. Don't come to any gatherings." No preamble, no attempt at softening the blow. Just cold, calculated severance, a digital exile delivered without hesitation. Seconds ticked by, each one an agonizing measure of the chasm that had just opened. Then, my sister, Kayla, chimed in, hearting the message with a speed and enthusiasm that suggested betrayal was, indeed, a team sport for them. The digital thumbs up felt like a physical blow. I didn't weep. I didn't plead for an explanation. Instead, a strange, unsettling calm washed over me. I opened my laptop, the cool metal a stark contrast to the sudden heat in my veins. I pulled up every bill, every account, every payment confirmation, a digital paper trail of my financial support, and I started clicking cancel. By 12:03 a.m., barely 12 minutes later, their carefully constructed world had begun to flicker, the lights threatening to go out. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me where you are listening from, so I know I'm not the only one who's ever had to systematically dismantle their family's financial lifeline. So I know I'm not alone in having to embrace the darkness when the family I thought I knew turned out to be an illusion. When the screen finally went dark, the silence in my small apartment became oppressive, heavier than the ceaseless hum of the city outside. The mundane sounds of the rhythmic hum of the refrigerator, the faint, almost ghostly tick of the antique wall clock, suddenly felt like the hushed whispers of witnesses, silently observing my unraveling. I sat there, my hands still resting on the cool keyboard, my heart beating with a steady, almost unnerving rhythm. Anger wasn't a roaring inferno this time. It was something colder, more clinical, a surgeon's precision. For years, I'd been the silent partner in their version of family, the unseen investor propping up their lifestyle, the mortgage payments that somehow always landed on time, shielding them from foreclosure, the car insurance that mysteriously renewed itself each year. Every late bill, every emergency, every tearful phone call that started with, "We just need a little help this month, Sophia." I'd covered it all without complaint. I told myself it was love, responsibility, the right thing to do. Now, staring into the abyss of my laptop screen, I realized it had been something else entirely. A subscription service, with me footing the ever-increasing bill. I scanned my apartment, taking in its sterile order. Everything was meticulously organized. Neat stacks of files, carefully labeled containers, color-coded folders, the physical manifestation of my coping mechanisms. After a childhood spent navigating chaos and uncertainty, I'd instinctively sought to build order out of the surrounding noise. But tonight, the order seemed to turn against me. Every neatly filed receipt, every scheduled automatic payment felt like irrefutable evidence of my own gullibility, a meticulous paper trail of my exploitation. I used to believe love was synonymous with endurance, that if I remained quiet, kept giving, and absorbed their needs, they'd eventually recognize my worth, see me as someone worth keeping in their orbit. My mother had raised me on guilt, serving it in small, frequent doses, like a carefully curated family recipe. My sister, Kayla, was the golden child, the charismatic star of the family, loud, charming, and allergic to consequences. Dad, he'd learned to survive by staying on the periphery, avoiding the fallout. And I'd learned to survive by preventing the explosion altogether. I vividly remembered the first time I covered their property tax bill. They were teetering on the edge of foreclosure, their voices cracking with desperation over the phone. I was only 26, barely managing my own rent, but I wired the money without a second thought. Mom had called me her guardian angel, and foolishly I had believed her. Then came the cascade of subsequent needs. The overdue utility bills, the car repairs, Kayla's college tuition, a staggering $18,000 a year, for 3 years straight. It's funny how guardian angels always end up footing the bill in hell. I rubbed my tired eyes, trying to summon a flicker of regret, but found only clarity. This wasn't an emotional breakdown. It was a financial audit, a dispassionate assessment of years of unpaid debts. I wasn't losing a family. I was meticulously collecting evidence. The last time I'd seen them in person was at a strained Sunday dinner 6 months prior. Mom had corrected my posture in front of everyone. A subtle but pointed dig. Kayla had regaled us with tales of her upcoming business trip that I knew, with a sinking feeling, was nothing more than a week-long vacation at a luxury beach resort, courtesy of my silent contributions. Dad had made a casual joke about how I was too serious to keep a man, a familiar refrain. I'd forced a smile, politely passed the mashed potatoes, and swallowed the bitter truth that sat heavy in my stomach. That dinner table hadn't been a place of familial connection. It had been a courtroom, and I, unknowingly, had been on trial. Now, bathed in the quiet glow of my laptop, I opened a new spreadsheet. The headings were simple: date, amount, reason, proof. My fingers moved across the keyboard with a newfound purpose, as if they already knew the path, guided by years of suppressed resentment. One column at a time, I was reclaiming years of unpaid respect, quantifying the sacrifices I had made in the name of family. Outside, the city lights blinked through my window in a rhythmic pattern, like a distorted Morse code. Somewhere out there, my family was sleeping soundly, secure in the belief that I'd finally accepted my role in their narrative, that I'd resigned myself to my digital exile. They had no idea I was just getting started. By morning, my phone had transformed into a digital museum of missed calls. Dad, Mom, Kayla, each name glowing on the screen like a relic from a life that no longer held any meaning for me. I didn't answer a single one. The silence between us had a tangible weight now, a palpable barrier built of years of resentment and unspoken truths. It was proof. The first message that managed to break through my defenses wasn't even from my mother. It was from Kayla, her words dripping with condescension. "You're overreacting. Mom didn't mean it that way. Can we just talk?" Talk. As if the very word hadn't been poisoned years ago, rendered meaningless by their constant manipulation and self-serving narratives. I read her message once, then again, and realized there wasn't a single shred of genuine apology contained within its carefully crafted lines. It was just another attempt at control, cleverly disguised as concern. I deleted it without a second thought and went back to my spreadsheet. Each line I filled was a memory transformed into cold, hard data. The exact day I'd covered Kayla's tuition bill, the overdraft fees from when Dad had borrowed my card for gas, the month I'd skipped my own rent payment to prevent their house from going into foreclosure. Every dollar had a story, and every story ended the same way, with me cleaning up their self-inflicted chaos. At 9 a.m., Mom finally sent an email, its tone devoid of warmth or remorse. No greeting, no apology, just a blunt demand. "We need to talk about what you've done. You've created a mess. Call us immediately." Not a single word about her cutting message from the previous night. No mention of the exile. Just a thinly veiled command to resume my assigned role. Fixer, buffer, peacekeeper. For the first time, I saw it with crystalline clarity. The family I thought I was saving had never wanted to be saved. They simply wanted a secretary, a personal ATM, a reliable scapegoat. I typed a brief reply, my fingers trembling slightly. "I'm busy reconciling accounts. You should do the same." Then, with a surge of defiance, I hit send. The phone rang almost instantly, its shrill tone a jarring intrusion into the newfound peace of my morning. I let it buzz until it fell silent, the unanswered call a small victory in the ongoing battle for my sanity. By noon, the panic had started to spread. A text from Dad, his usual jovial tone replaced with thinly veiled desperation. "Can you please explain what's going on with the utilities? Your mother's losing it." Another from Kayla, her carefully constructed facade of concern beginning to crumble. "Why are you doing this? You're ruining everything. Ruining everything." As if my silence was the crime, and not their years of deceit and betrayal. I opened my banking app, scrolled through years of transactions, and felt something inside me begin to shift. The heavy cloak of guilt that had been tattooed onto my bones for so long began to dissipate, slowly but surely. It wasn't anger I felt now. It was precision. Cold, deliberate, focused. By 3 p.m., they'd exhausted every tactic in their arsenal. Anger, pleading, guilt-tripping, nostalgic reminiscence. Mom even resorted to posting a vague, passive-aggressive Facebook update. Some people forget who raised them once they start making money. Pride comes before destruction. It garnered 36 likes, mostly from distant relatives who hadn't spoken to me in years. I didn't respond, but I saved a screenshot. That was the moment the scales definitively tipped. Not just in the financial accounts, but within me. For the first time, I understood that silence could be a powerful weapon, a carefully calculated strategy. At 6 p.m., I called Julia. She'd been my friend since college, and now she was a sharp, no-nonsense family law attorney who specialized in messy inheritances and convoluted estates. "I think I'm ready to stop playing accountant," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. She didn't ask for details, didn't waste time with platitudes. She simply replied, "Then start documenting everything. Every email, every payment, every transaction. We'll make it official." That night, I meticulously went through every email, every payment confirmation, every bank transfer, labeling and archiving them with the precision of a forensic accountant. The more I organized, the lighter I felt, as if I was shedding years of accumulated weight. By midnight, my inbox looked like a digital courtroom, filled with evidence meticulously prepared for trial. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one on trial. By the second night, the quiet in my apartment had developed a new rhythm, a subtle, almost anticipatory hum, the kind that precedes a storm. My laptop glowed in the darkness, each open tab a doorway into years of unpaid gratitude. Mortgage, insurance, tuition, taxes. They'd built their comfortable existence on my silence, on my willingness to sacrifice my own needs for theirs. And I was done paying for their peace. At 11 p.m., Julia called, her voice crisp and businesslike. "Everything ready? Every receipt? Every transfer? Every single one?" I confirmed, my voice echoing her newfound resolve. "Good. Then you're not asking for repayment, Sophia. You're enforcing it." She proceeded to dictate exactly what to write. A formal notice, calm, factual, and utterly lethal. The subject line, "Outstanding balances, Johnson family account." The body. "This email serves as formal notice of reimbursement due. You have 30 days to initiate a repayment plan before legal action is taken." No anger, no threats, just the cold, hard language of business, stripped bare of emotion. When I hit send, the silence that followed wasn't empty and oppressive. It was alive, charged with anticipation. 12 minutes later, the first response came in. "Dad, let's be reasonable." "Mom, how could you do this to us?" "Kayla, you're insane. You're ruining the family." I stared at their words, my gaze steady and detached. Each message echoed the same underlying sentiment. They weren't shocked by what they'd done. They were shocked that I'd finally stopped playing along. At 12:03 a.m., my phone began lighting up like a crime scene, an incessant barrage of calls, messages, and voicemails. The panic had officially set in. "Turn the lights back on," Mom shouted on one voicemail, her voice cracking with a mixture of rage and desperation. "We'll fix this tomorrow." But tomorrow had already arrived, and for the first time they were the ones standing in the dark. Julia's email popped up seconds later. "Perfect. Forward everything to me. We're filing a demand letter by morning." I leaned back in my chair, watching the cursor blink beside my name on the screen. Sophia Johnson. It struck me how many times I'd signed that name to save them on checks, leases, contracts. Every signature had been a promise, a vow of unwavering support. Tonight, it became evidence. At 1 a.m., another message arrived from Kayla, dripping with venom. "You think this makes you strong? You're heartless. Heartless." The word used to sting, used to send a wave of guilt crashing over me. Now, it felt accurate, almost necessary. My compassion had been a luxury they'd overdraft for years, and I was finally closing the account. I poured myself a glass of water, my hands surprisingly steady for the first time in months. This wasn't about revenge. It was about accounting, about reclaiming what was rightfully mine. Before logging off for the night, I opened one last tab. The property deed to their house, the one they bragged about finally owning, the one that was still, inexplicably, under my name. I'd never transferred the title out of caution, out of some lingering subconscious instinct. Now, that instinct felt like a source of untapped power. By dawn, Julia had sent the first draft of the legal notice for me to review. She ended it with one line that made me smile. "They said you were out of the family. Let's make it official." Outside, the streetlights flickered off as morning broke, the city slowly awakening to a new day. Inside, my laptop glowed with a different kind of sunrise, the kind made of facts, numbers, and quiet retribution. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel small or forgotten. I felt precise, in control. The morning the legal notices went out, the world outside looked deceptively normal. Coffee shops were opening, traffic was humming along. Sunlight was slowly crawling up the blinds of my apartment. But inside, it felt like waiting for a verdict, the air thick with anticipation. Julia had sent the demand package to each of them by certified mail and email, every receipt, every dollar, every signature meticulously attached. At 9:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. Dad, he never called first. "Sweetheart," he began, that rehearsed softness coating every syllable. "This is getting out of hand. Let's keep this private." I let the silence stretch between us until he faltered, his carefully constructed facade beginning to crack. "It's already private," I said, my voice steady and unwavering. "It's just finally documented." He inhaled sharply, a sound that conveyed a mixture of shock and disbelief. "You're making your mother sick." "No," I said, my voice still calm, but edged with steel. "She made herself sick. I just stopped paying for the medicine." Click. By noon, Mom's post hit Facebook, a wall of self-pity wrapped in carefully selected scripture verses. "We raised her with love, and now she's turned against her own family for money. Pride comes before destruction." Underneath, Aunt Gina, the family gossip, commented, "Disgusting behavior. I'd be ashamed." Then, for the first time in years, other names began to appear, names of cousins, uncles, people I barely spoke to anymore. "Wait, didn't she cover your house after the foreclosure?" One wrote, "Isn't that the tuition girl?" The carefully constructed narrative began to unravel, the thread of truth slowly emerging from the tangle of lies. Their story cracked open. At 1:46 p.m., an email arrived from Julia. Subject, "Additional discovery." Attached was a PDF containing screenshots of bank records and sworn statements. Julia's note read, "Confirming inheritance withdrawal, $40,000. Signature mismatch. Forgery likely." I read it 3 times, the words sinking in with the force of a physical blow. The remodel, the new kitchen, the unexpected vacation, the timeline aligned perfectly. My mother hadn't just drained my bank account. She'd stolen my grandmother's trust fund and forged my name to do it. By evening, Julia had already filed an injunction, and the court froze their assets before dinner. That night, my parents tried every channel of communication: emails, texts, voicemails, all looping the same desperate refrain. "It was a misunderstanding. We'll pay you back. Don't ruin the family." The irony was so thick, it made me laugh out loud. At 8:32 p.m., the buzzer rang, its shrill tones slicing through the quiet of my apartment. I peered through the peephole and saw my mother standing in the hallway, her eyes red and swollen, clutching a crumpled envelope in her trembling hands. "Sophia," she whispered, her voice hoarse with desperation. "Please, we're losing everything. Do something for your sister." "For Kayla?" I asked, my voice flat. Her lips trembled. "She's still your sister." I opened the door just enough to hand her the paper already waiting on my table. A copy of the eviction notice Julia had filed that morning. "You'll get the official copy in 7 days," I said, my gaze unwavering. Her face drained of color. "You wouldn't." "I already did." She stared at me, desperately searching for the old version of her daughter, the one who fixed, forgave, and funded. But that version was gone, replaced by someone she no longer recognized. "Goodbye, Mom," I said, and closed the door. I didn't watch her leave. I just stood in the quiet of my apartment, breathing in the end of an era. By the next afternoon, chaos unfolded with grim efficiency. The utilities were disconnected. The mortgage foreclosure notice hit their inbox. Julia forwarded confirmation that the title transfer was secured, the eviction approved, and the probate court notified. Then came the inevitable storm online. Another post from Mom, dripping with self-righteous indignation. "She's suing her own parents. We're heartbroken." This time, the replies weren't sympathetic. Aunt Meredith, usually quiet and reserved, typed a single, devastating line. "You mean the stunt where you forged her signature?" The thread went dead. Hours later, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. New York area code. "This is Amy Patel from the Patterson and Low Probate Office." The voice on the other end said, "We're handling your late grandmother's estate. We found discrepancies in the beneficiary list." I gripped the counter, my heart pounding in my chest. "Discrepancies?" "Yes, Miss Johnson. It appears your name was crossed out and replaced. The signature doesn't match. The remodel, the marble countertops, every piece of the puzzle slid into place with horrifying clarity." "Thank you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Please send everything to my attorney." By midnight, Julia confirmed the filing of inheritance fraud. Another freeze, another layer of truth exposed. In the following days, the story spread quietly through the family. One by one, relatives reached out, cousins I hadn't heard from in years. "They borrowed from us too," they confided. "They never paid anyone back. You're not crazy, Sophia." Every message was a small rescue boat in a flood I'd been drowning in for years. When the official court notice arrived, Julia called. "They'll try to contact you again," she warned. "Don't engage, even if they apologize." She paused, then added, "Especially if they apologize." The next morning, my inbox exploded again. Mom's new tactic was remorse, dripping with saccharine sentiment. "We forgive you. Please forgive us." Forgiveness as leverage, the oldest trick in the book. I forwarded the email to Julia and archived the thread. By the end of the week, the house was no longer theirs. The deed, still under my name, was sold within days. Julia wired the proceeds to my account. Watching the confirmation line appear on the screen felt nothing like revenge. It felt like balance, like the slow, agonizing correction of a long-standing injustice. Kayla tried one more time, a final, desperate text. "You won." I typed back, "No one wins when family becomes dead," then muted her number for good. That night, the city outside flickered steady and indifferent. I sat by the window, the same window that had once reflected every sleepless night I spent saving them. Now it reflected something new, me, alone, but finally unburdened. Somewhere out there, they were learning how to live without me. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty for letting them. By the time the court finalized everything, weeks had passed in a strange, quiet rhythm. Julia sent me a short email. "Case resolved. Repayment agreement signed. Probate reversed. You're clear." Clear. The word felt foreign, almost surreal. Their accounts were frozen, their house was sold, and their debts were legally tied to their own names. For once, the silence that used to haunt me had transformed into a palpable sense of peace. I no longer woke to frantic emergency calls or requests for just one more favor. My mornings were mine again, filled with the promise of a new beginning. I bought a small apartment downtown. Nothing grand, just clean walls, sunlight, and no ghosts. Evan helped me move in. He didn't say much, just handed me a cup of coffee and smiled knowingly, as if he understood exactly what freedom tasted like. The first night there, I opened my old spreadsheet, the one where I'd meticulously tracked every dollar I'd spent on them. I stared at the numbers for a long time, then with a deep breath, I hit delete. Watching it vanish from the screen didn't feel like loss. It felt like release, like the final severing of ties that had bound me for far too long. Word eventually got around that my parents were renting a small house outside the city, struggling to make ends meet. Kayla was working part-time somewhere she hated, her dreams of a lavish lifestyle fading with each passing day. I didn't feel satisfaction, just a profound sense of distance. They were finally living the life they'd built without me holding it up, and while I didn't celebrate their hardship, I refused to feel guilty about it. That night, for the first time in years, I slept straight through till morning. No guilt, no noise, just the steady, quiet hum of a life that finally belonged to me. A month later, I visited my grandmother's grave. I laid down tulips, her favorite flower, and whispered, "It's done." The wind rustled through the trees, sounding almost like an answer. Peace isn't loud. It's quiet, steady, earned. If you've ever had to walk away from the people who broke you, you know this. You're not alone. And you're not cruel for choosing peace, for prioritizing your own well-being over the suffocating expectations of others. If this story hit home, explore the Family Betrayal playlist for more true stories like mine. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss the next chapter. Because sometimes the most important chapter is the one where you finally choose yourself.